If you hold XRP or XLM, this is crucial to know. Just a quick reminder. Nothing here is financial advice. This is strategic information for research-driven crypto holders and builders. Do your own due diligence. If you hold XRP or XLM, you're sitting on two assets that are no longer just speculative payment tokens left over from the 2017 hype cycle. They are being wired directly into institutional liquidity, stablecoin settlement rails, global remittance access, and the ISO 20022 data upgrade that every serious bank must navigate before November 22, 2025. Add Ripple's billion-dollar institutional push with the Hidden Road acquisition. Add a USD-backed stablecoin, RLUSD, that institutions can actually use in prime brokerage. Add the XRP ledger's on-chain AMM and institutional permissioning upgrades. Add Stellar's Soroban smart contracts rolling into real-world rails. USDC hitting new highs on Stellar, MoneyGram's cash ramps across more than 170 countries, and a fast race to tokenize treasuries, receivables, and payroll flows across emerging markets. The global money plumbing is being rewired while most retail still watches memecoins. If you own XRP or XLM and you're not tracking regulatory deadlines, stablecoin liquidity wars, and which networks are capturing real payment flow, you're flying blind into the most important structural setup these assets have faced in years. Stay with me. We'll break down the macro payment reset, the Ripple/XRP institutional pivot, Stellar's real-world traction explosion, how stablecoins and tokenized assets change the demand curve for both networks, and how I think about positioning, rotating, and managing risk across XRP, XLM, and the stablecoins that plug into them. If you want deep dive breakdowns with verifiable sources and actionable frameworks for long-term crypto positioning, subscribe to Be Crypto Smart, hit like, and turn on notifications. We do macro plus on-chain data. No fluff. What we're covering. The global payments reset countdown, Ripple's institutional pivot and why liquidity still needs XRP, Stellar's real-world ramp with Soroban, USDC, MoneyGram, and tokenized working capital. How everything converges in a multi-network future. How I'd be positioning if I hold XRP or XLM, and the specific next moves to prep before publishing. The global payments reset countdown. The clock Wall Street watches, ISO 20022 and the SWIFT deadline. Mark this date, November 22nd, 2025. That's the scheduled end of the SWIFT CBPR plus coexistence window. Translation. The world's cross-border interbank messaging migrates off the old MT formats and standardizes on ISO 20022 structured data. You get richer fields, more compliance context baked into payment messages, fewer lost in translation, correspondent hops, and more automation in treasury systems. This matters to XRP and XLM holders because structured, machine-readable payment data is what lets banks safely plug into programmable settlement layers, stablecoins, tokenized deposits, and blockchain rails without blowing up compliance. During the 2023-2025 coexistence period, banks could stall. After coexistence, the cost of non-compliance spikes. Institutions under deadline pressure adopt anything that reduces message repair, reconciliation, and FX slippage. Networks that ingest ISO reference data, reconcile fees in real time, and settle across borders quickly become strategic. XRP and Stellar positioned early as messaging plus value settlement layers. This window is when that positioning can turn into recurring institutional volume, if integrations close. Messaging alone doesn't move money. ISO 20022 improves data, not settlement. Banks still sit on pre-funded liquidity, Nostro/Vostro balances, multi-hop correspondent chains, and batch FX processes. Slow, capital-intensive, error-prone. Blockchain settlement changes that. If a bank can message in ISO and settle in tokenized cash, stablecoins, tokenized deposits, central bank money proxies, or route through a secondary liquidity asset like XRP or a remittance-optimized access layer like Stellar, you collapse steps. Less trapped float, faster reconciliation, lower reject rates. ISO gives regulators the data they need. Blockchain gives operators the finality they want. Snap them together and global B2B plus retail cross-border starts to structurally reprice. Remittances, the quiet megaflow. Global remittances are sticky, countercyclical, and huge. Recorded flows to low and middle-income countries landed in the mid-$600B range in 2023 and have continued growing through 2025, pushing toward the high $600B zone on conservative projections. Broadened to include high-income corridors and informal channels, and estimates push well north of $800 billion. This is life support capital, rent, food, healthcare, school fees. Users don't care about Layer 1 ideology. They care about speed, reliability, cash-out access, and cost. Average global remittance fees remain stuck in mid-single-digit percentages. Policymakers keep shouting under 3%. But many Africa, Latin America, and Asia lanes are still expensive, slow, paper-heavy, and opaque. That spread between policy goal and reality is where stablecoin rails and crypto on/off-ramps attack. Policy pressure builds. Governments under fiscal strain have floated remittance tax ideas. That's effectively a tax on the poor and drives flows toward informal or crypto channels. Whenever regulators raise cost in formal rails, volume migrates elsewhere. Increasingly, that elsewhere is platforms integrating USDC, RLUSD, or other regulated stablecoins across networks like Stellar or Ripple-adjacent corridors. At the same time, regional blocs, especially across parts of Africa, are working on coordinated cross-border payment systems to cut multi-hop dollar settlement. Infrastructure that bridges regulated fiat ramps to digital liquidity with compliance hooks is strategically valuable. Ripple and Stellar were built for this moment. Instant domestic rails meet cross-border ambitions. FedNow in the US, PIX in Brazil, UPI in India, Instant SEPA in Europe, new African clearing initiatives. Domestic payment latency is collapsing. The next battleground is stitching these instant domestic rails into low-friction cross-border settlement. Doing that usually requires shared liquidity pools, tokenized settlement assets, or multi-currency netting layers. XRP's design goal: bridge currency pairs without heavy pre-funded nostro balances. Stellar's design goal: connect fiat endpoints, anchors, and handle last-mile access, including cash-in and cash-out through partners such as MoneyGram. Why XRP and XLM holders should care now. Infrastructure deadlines have dates. Budgets are allocated. Integration work is happening today. Even a low single-digit percentage of global remittance, payroll, or B2B volume touching settlement paths that require XRP for liquidity routing, or using Stellar for stablecoin issuance and distribution that burns XLM for base fees, creates a structural demand floor retail rarely prices in. Ripple's institutional pivot, RLUSD, Hidden Road, and the new XRP demand stack. This is not 2017 Ripple. Old story. Ripple sold XRP while promising future bank usage. New story. Ripple is buying institutional market structure, prime brokerage, compliant stablecoin platforms, exchange-grade liquidity access, so institutional money can move in size across digital and traditional rails. That's a complete shift. Key milestones driving the pivot. RLUSD launched in late 2024. A fully reserved USD-backed stablecoin built for enterprise and regulatory optics, issued natively on the XRP ledger and on Ethereum. April 2025. Ripple agreed to acquire prime broker Hidden Road in a roughly $1.25 billion deal. Hidden Road clears trillions in annual multi-asset flow for institutional clients. RLUSD is being modeled as collateral inside that prime environment, instantly connecting Ripple's stablecoin to high-velocity institutional trading flows. Regulatory overhang easing. Court rulings narrowed the long SEC case. Tone has shifted towards structured compliance. Derivatives and ETF access expanding. CME XRP futures plus leveraged ETF approvals show regulators are comfortable with institutional risk tools even without a spot ETF. XRPL upgrades. Native AMM, price Oracle plumbing, permissioning hooks. Together, this positions XRP as bridge asset, fee token, and potential balance sheet efficiency tool in a Ripple-controlled stack. RLUSD. Not just another stablecoin. Institutional collateralization. Hidden Road's framework lets funds post RLUSD like cash to access leverage across assets. Demand independent of retail payments. Dual issuance. Lives on XRPL and Ethereum. Move cheaply on XRPL. Tap deep DeFi on EVM venues. Arbitrage tightens spreads and attracts market makers. XRP linkage. Every XRPL transaction, RLUSD moves, tokenized treasuries, DEX routes, pays tiny XRP fees that are burned. Small, individually, meaningful at scale if throughput rises. The XRP RLUSD liquidity flywheel. AMM Live means liquidity providers can seed XRP/RLUSD pools directly on ledger. OTC desks can warehouse RLUSD and route into XRP without leaving XRPL. Arbitrage tightens spreads between centralized exchanges and on-ledger pools. LPs earn flow fees, not inflation emissions. Deeper pools reduce slippage for Ripple's on-demand liquidity (ODL) conversions. RippleNet, ODL, and the institutional rebrand. Ripple used to sell software modules. Usage didn't always require XRP. Now the play is bundle liquidity XRP plus RLUSD, with infrastructure so customers pick the lowest cost, most compliant path. Where banks can't hold XRP, RLUSD can intermediate. Where they can, XRP bridges FX pairs. The more Ripple controls, from API to clearing broker, the more flows can be nudged toward settlement states that touch XRP. Regulatory status snapshot. Mid-2025. A July 2023 federal ruling distinguished programmatic exchange sales of XRP from certain institutional sales, slashing existential risk for secondary trading. Penalty and injunction phases continued into 2025. Negotiations over fines and distribution practices remain active. With a more crypto-accommodative SEC posture after the 2024 political shift, the environment is moving from punishment toward structured compliance. Headline risk is decaying. Lower tail risk supports higher valuations if usage improves. Why derivatives access matters. CME, XRP futures, and leveraged ETF products allow hedging and structured exposure. When desks can hedge, they're more willing to inventory XRP to support cross-border flow, tightening spreads and improving settlement liquidity. Institutional features coming on ledger. Native AMM, external price oracles, permission domains for KYC-restricted pools, and long-standing tools like escrow and payment channels, all reduce friction for institutional adoption when combined. XRP demand drivers. Plain English. RLUSD used as large-scale margin collateral after the hidden road deal closes could boost XRPL traffic and deepen XRP/RLUSD pools. ODL corridor expansion as U.S. regulatory clarity improves would increase XRP sourcing for FX bridges. Growing derivatives depth tightens spot spreads and improves inventory management. On-ledger real-world assets settling in RLUSD increase fee burn and liquidity. Retail rotation back into utility narratives can amplify exchange demand during macro shifts. Key dates and signals to watch. XRP side. March 2025 Fedwire ISO 20022 cutover. Watch U.S. bank engagement with Ripple. Hidden road deal approval and close steps across 2025. Ongoing SEC versus Ripple docket updates. Consent decree terms matter. XRPL data. XRP/RLUSD pool depth, on-ledger volumes, fee burn, validator vote activity. Stellar's real-world ramp, Soroban, USDC, cash access and tokenized working capital. Reality check. Price charts hide the real game. Stellar spent years wiring regulated fiat anchors, NGO disbursement tools, payroll rails, and on/off-ramps into emerging markets. 2025 is when that groundwork shows measurable on-chain traction. User growth, RWA issuance, stablecoin volume, and serious throughput targets. How I'd be positioning if I hold XRP or XLM, not financial advice. Utility cycles versus hype cycles. Memecoins move on attention. Utility assets reprice around adoption milestones, regulatory clarity, and liquidity depth. Sideways, then sharp repricing when calendars cluster. Size core before deadlines. Add-on confirmation. Trim during reflexive blow-offs when retail floods in. Portfolio buckets. Example only. Core utility stack. Long-term XRP plus XLM, you'll hold across the infrastructure wave. Only trim if the thesis breaks. Reg kill or tech failure. Catalyst swing. Tactical XRP or XLM sized for events. Hidden road close. Soroban upgrade. ETF headlines. Bank integrations. Trade volatility. Scale out on pops. Stablecoin yield and liquidity. RLUSD USDC on Stellar, tokenized T-bills parked in low-risk yield or AMM pools. Dry powder plus income. Rotate into core on dips. Speculative ecosystem plays. Soroban-DeFi, XRPL DEX incentives, anchor or wallet tokens. Higher beta, tight risk controls. Cash buffer. Fiat for downside, taxes, flexibility. Time-segmented positioning. Now, 6 months. Track SEC versus Ripple settlement updates. Trade volatility spikes. Watch RLUSD growth and early XRP/RLUSD AMM depth. Test LP only if yield compensates risk. Accumulate XLM on weakness while Soroban usage plus USDC flow rise. Check wallet growth quarterly. 16 months into November 22, 2025 ISO deadline position ahead of bank cutover headlines. They often drop close to deadlines. Keep stablecoin dry powder ready to rotate on adoption news. Track MoneyGram country expansion. User growth can front-run token repricing. 36 months post-migration if institutional volume sticks. Shift from catalyst trading to yield. Corridor LPs, tokenized treasury collateral loops. Hedging larger positions via CME XRP futures. Liquidity provision advanced. XRP/RLUSD pools on XRPL. Earn corridor flow fees. Best in low-vol periods. Watch volatility risk. USDC/local fiat tokens on Stellar Soroban AMMs. Strong in remittance lanes. Holiday seasons can spike volume. Multi-pool routing across bridges. RLUSD USDC local anchor asset capture stacked fees if volume flows. Always consider smart contract risk, regulatory freeze risk on fiat-backed assets, and slippage in thin pools. Weekly data dashboard, what I track. XRP ledger. Daily transactions, fee burn, top AMM pool depth, RLUSD supply validator votes. Ripple corporate. Hidden road integration steps, enterprise client ads, ODL corridor announcements, regulatory filings. Stellar. Active addresses, USDC circulating, total RWA issuance, Soroban contract counts, network TPS, MoneyGram volume if available. Macro. Swift ISO readiness bulletins, Fedwire migration status, global remittance cost trend versus the G20 target. Regulatory U.S. stablecoin legislation status, regional e-money licensing that affects Stellar anchors, remittance tax proposals. Scenario planning, stress your thesis. Regulatory clarity boom. SEC settles, U.S. stablecoin law passes, banks greenlight pilots. XRP re-rates, RLUSD demand jumps, Stellar anchors see inflows. Trim some swing, add LP, boost yield bucket. Stablecoin fragmentation war. USDT/USDC dominate. RLUSD lags. XRP usage concentrated in Ripple clients. XLM accrues via base fees. Focus on yield plus vol trades. Aid/remittance shock. Crisis or tax sends record flows to alternative rails. Stellar ramps explode. XLM demand rises. XRP sees spillover. Rotate stablecoins into XLM plus corridor LP. Content pivot to humanitarian rails. Tech failure/exploit. Soroban bug or XRPL AMM exploit. Usage drops. Tokens dump. Hedge in stablecoins. Pause LP until patched. Macro risk off. Dollar spike. Broad sell-off. XRP and XLM fall with beta. Stablecoins gain share. Rotate toward RLUSD/USDC. Ladder reentries. Talk risk honestly. Reg clarity is in progress, not done. Stablecoin scale doesn't guarantee token appreciation unless network usage feeds native demand. Institutional integrations are slow. Volatility is extreme versus traditional assets. Size positions accordingly. Talking points cheat sheet. ISO 20022 is a data standard that unlocks automation. It doesn't autopump tokens. Ripple bought infrastructure. That's how you move from selling software to owning flows. Stellar is winning last-mile access, cash in, cash out, NGOs, payroll, and that volume is sticky. Stablecoins are the Trojan horse. Once they flow, XRP and XLM sit in the routing layer. Position before deadlines. Trim when the crowd shows up. Your next moves. We're living through a payments infrastructure transition that only comes once every couple decades. The world is upgrading to ISO 20022 data. Instant domestic rails are everywhere. Regulated stablecoins are mainstreaming. Financial claims, from T-bills to receivables, are being tokenized. XRP is aligning with institutional liquidity plumbing. Prime brokerage, derivatives access, stablecoin collateral, compliance modules large players recognize. Stellar is scaling distribution. Cash ramps, NGO disbursements, stablecoin transport, and programmable smart contracts for real-world finance in emerging corridors. You don't have to pick a tribe. Understand where value accrues when money moves. Fees, spreads, collateral, reserves, gateway liquidity. Both networks can capture slices, sometimes in the same transaction chain. Before you publish, day of checklist. Update market caps and circulating supply for XRP, XLM, RLUSD, USDC. Check the latest SEC versus Ripple docket and date stamp it. Confirm hidden road deal status. Approval/close ETA. Pull current USDC supply on Stellar and the latest SDF network metrics. Confirm the Swift CBPR plus end date remains November 22, 2025. And always remember, nothing here is investment advice, trading advice, or a solicitation to buy or sell any asset. Crypto assets are highly volatile and subject to regulatory, technological, and market risks. Always do your own research, consult qualified professionals where appropriate, and never invest money you cannot afford to lose. If this breakdown helped you, and if you hold XRP or XLM and want to stay ahead of the institutional and real-world adoption curve, subscribe to Be Crypto Smart, hit the bell, and drop a comment naming the corridor you want me to deep dive next. US to Mexico, EU to Africa, Gulf remittances, your call. I'll pull data, map the rails, and show where the spread is leaking alpha. Like, subscribe. Share with the one friend still holding bags from 2018 without a plan. Let's get smarter together.